I was a guest on a podcast. Hi, my name is Scott Miller, and this is Trail Ambitions, where I talk about things that may improve your trail running. In this video, you will see my interview on the podcast, Running with Problems, hosted by John Eisen and Miranda Williamson, who also happen to be friends of mine and members of my running group. Their podcast is about the challenges that we face as runners, from navigating our bodies, dealing with social dynamics, and facing personal trauma. They are on their third season and have had some pretty incredible guests, so I was honored when they asked me to be on. In addition to being very accomplished runners themselves, John and Miranda are great people and a lot of fun to hang out with. I'll have a link to their website in the description below and a list of where you can hear their shows, including Apple, Spotify, and Google. Please give them a listen. Here's my episode. I hope you enjoy it.
Ready. Okay, Scott,
Yes.
I'm so excited to have you here in our studio.
I'm very excited as well.
Which now definitely looks like a studio.
I know.
Lighting and everything.
This is
Not
our
very good lighting, but
It's pretty good.
very first video pod.
Yeah.
First ever.
I'm excited for this to go up on your YouTube channel. Trail Ambitions. We're going to say it about 100 times through the episode, just so everyone hears it a lot.
Yes.
Go follow Trail Ambitions.
But before we dive into Trail Ambitions, we're going to be talking about the Breakfast Club.
yes.
Which I have to credit the Breakfast Club for becoming the mountain runner that I am today. Because when I first moved to Boulder, I was very intimidated by some of the groups out there. Actually, a lot of the groups. And I was intimidated by the Breakfast Club as well. I remember the first time I joined, I was like, am I going to be able to keep up with these Boulder runners?
Boulder runners are intimidating.
I would agree.
But then it was such like a welcoming community and so supportive on some of these gnarly adventures like Long's Peak that I never would have gone on without that level of support and navigation
did very
and
well on it.
direction. And I have since, moved on to even bigger adventures, but that was the start. That was the start of my journey as a Boulder trail runner.
And we were glad to have you.
But Breakfast Club does impact a lot of newer people to Boulder.
does.
It is a safe place to experience the mountain running that a lot of Boulder runners talk about, but there aren't too many places where you can get that environment of teaching you what kind of gear you need, what kind of what kind of running you should be doing. I mean, should you be running in the front? Maybe not, right? Like you should be conserving yourself because Scott said it would be 18 miles, but it's actually 22.
Well, there is an error factor that I'm allowed.
Yeah, you always gotta take it as Scott miles.
Yeah.
But how would you describe the Breakfast Club to someone who doesn't know what it is?
Let's see. Well, I usually say it's not a beginner group, but it's not an advanced group either. So
Right.
it's somewhere in the middle. We do advanced runs,
Right.
relatively speaking, but I think it's welcoming to most anybody who's up to a certain level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a little hard to describe in that way. But I will say, just based on what you just mentioned, in the description of the run, like in the description of the site in general, the Boulder Trail Running Breakfast Club, I made sure to put in there that, we never want people to forget why they joined a group in the first place. So there's this intimidation factor with groups in Boulder, and I thought about that before I started it. And a lot of people don't join or mention that they don't join groups, or they're concerned about joining because they've showed up for a group in the past and everyone took off running and they were left by themselves. So I wanted to make a conscious effort that, okay, this group is welcoming to everybody, but also we're going to be a group. We're going to run as a group. There's going to be fast people and slow people. It's just the way it is. But you never forget that we're a group. And so
I like that.
that was really the main driver. So back to your question, how do you describe the group? Well, the runs are not beginner runs. So there is a certain threshold that you want to get to as far as conditioning and what you're able to do. And I have an article out there somewhere, I think it's on my site, that I laid out some, guidelines for whether when you should be ready or when you could be ready to join the run.
And what are some of those guidelines?
They were, I have to remember, but one of them was whether you're fun or not. I only want fun people joining the group. One of them was, could you actually run the distance? So if you were, one was what time in the distance. Because obviously when you're doing mountain run, it's not just about time, and distance and so forth, but it's elevation gain, there's terrain, there's all these different factors that go into it.
Some of these mountain adventures will take a whole day, like 8+ hours.
Yeah. We'll say, we're doing a 12-mile run and it's going to take 3 hours. Certain people just roll their eyes at that, but then they come on the run, they're like, oh, I realize why it took 3 hours, because it wasn't just straight, 12 miles. So there's a lot like that. So, looking at, could you run the distance? Could you hike that time? I think that's what it was. Could you hike for this amount of time? So if I say it's a 3 or 5 hour run, could you hike for 5 hours? Have you done that before? And then from the running part, could you run a race of that distance? So if it's a 13,
on your best day,
if it's a 13-mile run, could you run
a half marathon?
Could you do that? And then could you actually hike so some combination of that hiking and running, you'll be fine.
Right.
But, and that's more or less just to mentally be prepared for the run, because once you get into it, people always do a lot more than they thought they could.
Right.
It's because there's the group dynamics. Also, you're waiting
it's encouraging,
for
it's fun.
Exactly.
And when you're having fun, you always run better.
Yeah. And then there's the FOMO. When you run up to a mountain, there's always that, what's around that next corner, what's over that ridge.
Is that mountain taller? Let's go to that one.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes the group splits up, right? Sometimes there's a shorter distance and sometimes a longer distance.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I tried to do too, is as I was throughout the years, because I became more familiar with the runs that we were doing, and I could figure out that, okay, there's a shorter option here. And so advertising that, which would allow certain people to be, maybe come out where they wouldn't have before, because there's a shorter option to test it out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it always having these big summer adventure runs? Was that part of the group in the early days?
Not always. No. Actually, I didn't actually start the group. I inherited the group.
Well, let's hear the origin story.
Yeah. So the origin story is there was a guy who, so it was started with me starting to run. So I hadn't been a runner until I moved to Boulder. And then about 5 years after I moved to Boulder, I started to wanting to run. So went out and did Boulder for the first time, got hooked on that, but wasn't really big on the whole road running thing. So I wanted to do this. I wanted to try trails.
Okay.
And so I got a hiking book, opened the page 1, and then started, just starting on the first trail and the second trail and so forth. So at some point I got up to Hall Ranch, which is up by Lyons.
Yeah.
And I happened to show up there, and these 3 guys had just finished, and I, started the conversation with them and just talking about trails and what they were doing, and they were out there running, same type of thing. So, said, a few words about different trails they had suggested, like Magnolia Road or, other trails like that. Oh yeah,
gotta run mags.
Yeah. So, so I went and ran that trail. And then the next week I was like, well, they mentioned Magnolia Roads. Maybe I'll go run Magnolia Road.
Okay.
Because I didn't know anything at that point. I was just trying things out. So I went up to Magnolia Road, parked my car, started running up the road.
You running from the base?
Right when where the dirt starts.
Yeah.
So from there, heading towards Peak Highway.
It's a big hill.
Yeah. But I started at the top and I was running down.
Okay.
So,
that's not so bad.
Yeah. So about a mile in, these 3 guys are coming the other way. The same guys that were on the last run. Okay. I'm like, oh, hey. So I said hi to him, and then one of the guys from that left his card on my car, and he said, if you're, it looks like we're running the same stuff. Why don't you come join us?
Oh, Wow.
So this was a guy by the name of Gordon Regal, and he was I think a city councilman at some point back. He
In
also
Boulder?
he was also a professor at CU. He taught a leadership course. But great guy. And so I started running. I went out with them and started running with those guys, and they had about maybe 12, 15 people on an email list. And they would go run around the res, or we do a couple miles or something like that, and then we go out and have breakfast. And so we did that for a couple years. The group would it was word of mouth, so it was kind of expanding and so forth. Got to like maybe 20 people on the email list, and then Gordon got a plantar fasciitis in his foot, and it lasted for like 9 months.
Oh.
And so he was out for the whole summer, and so I didn't want
The killer.
Yeah. I didn't want the group to stop. So I said, well, why don't you give me your email list and I'll start sending it out. So I just started sending out the list, and we were doing, more of that stuff, maybe lions a little bit, res, maybe a little bit in the mountains or so forth. But I started to gravitate more mountain running just over the next year. And I started, I'd run into people and they want to, I'd add them to the list. And so it got up to about 30 people or so. And around 2010, I was thinking about, it'd be nice if there was a way that, like a website that I could just, send out to somebody, and rather than having to put them on this email.
A place where people could find groups to meet up with.
Yeah. I mean, this was 2010, so Facebook was really the main thing out there.
Yeah.
Meetup had just started. And there was a couple other things that were just started. So I was researching, where should I put this thing? So I wanted to put it online. And so I decided to put it on Meetup. So January 1st, 2010, I put it on Meetup, created a Meetup site. And 15 people from that list came over, because the other 15, I didn't even know who they were. They were Gordon's friends. So it started at 15, and 14 years later, we're now at about just under 3,000.
Wow.
And I was less than 3,000 people show up to the run.
Yes,
That
just
is-
to be clear.
I'm very
We
thankful
always
that.
follow no more than 8 on national forest trails, no more than 25 on any Boulder trails.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of those are lurkers, as they call them, but that's fine. It's
Yeah.
great. So
But some of these runs do get big,
Yeah.
when the get crowd size, maybe you have to split it in two. It's a vibrant community these days.
yeah, so back in the early days, it was 6 to 10 people, maybe or so. We would just do local stuff. Then every once in a while, we'd go do a mountain run. Maybe one per summer. And after a couple of years, we're like, these mountain runs are kind of good. And then we started adding a few more in there. And then pretty soon I just added more and more and more. Probably have about 75 in my repertoire at the moment.
That you cycle through.
In summer alpine season. Although I tend to like the winter runs. But
I think,
Yeah.
you and I go to the winter runs more now.
that's true. It's true.
Well, it's interesting because I found there's clearly a cyclical nature to it, because during the summer, certain people come out, they're doing that type of thing. And right now, being September, October timeframe, there's this dynamic that happens where it just naturally feels like certain people start pulling back. And then there's a couple weeks or so where there'll be low volume on the runs, and then all of a sudden it picks up, and it's like the winter crowd or the fall crowd is there. So it's like this cyclical thing that just kind of goes around.
Yeah.
And
Which season do you get more new people?
it's probably, I don't know. It's probably the same. It's probably both. I mean,
Probably
winter,
equal.
yeah, because
I always think like fall. Fall gets a lot of new people because people come back to training in the fall.
yeah, it
But
depends.
also the spring, right?
Yeah.
People are excited for summer adventures, or they're excited for fall marathons, right? And they come back to running and they join the groups again.
Yeah, it depends. Because like during the summer, in years past that I've measured it, there's been about 100 to 112, active people coming through the group. Obviously, we're limiting it to 10, 15, 25 or so runners, but that's a lot of people that are cycling through. Some are there more often. Others are kind of just coming through based on race schedules and different things like that. But then during the winter time, there's, constantly people like all year round. It really depends. We've had some new people this summer, and we had quite a few new people from last winter join, and then stuck through the summer. And
Right.
It's always nicer to go from winter to summer than, I mean, I think if you move here from a place like San Diego and you go from summer to winter.
yeah. Well, it's also the types of runs that we do. I mean, in the winter, they're closer, they're typically a little shorter, maybe a couple hours, 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
But people dropping in the middle of the summer where we're doing 5 to 6 hour plus runs.
Oh, I didn't realize this was an all day thing.
Yeah.
It's like, don't make Saturday plans.
Yeah.
Some of those winter runs, though, will go down in history as being like long and horrible.
You had that one Bear Peak day.
Oh, the Bear Peak Day, the Southern California folks came on that run and never came back.
Came back.
It's because it was like, it was warm down here. Was it like 60 down here?
It's like
or something?
40.
40?
But it's 40 and sunny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
40
It was
and
nice.
sunny. It was nice. And they were in shorts and like a little tiny jacket or something. And then we went all the way up to the peak of Bear, it was cold enough to like bite your bones.
70 mile an hour gusting winds.
Yeah, when it was like blowing ice snow into your face.
I think that's one of the most amazing things about Boulder is that you can do a true alpine run and finish it hot in the sun. because Bear in the winter can just be super awful for absolute winter conditions. But then you come down, like if you're doing a skyline, you finish on Sanitas, it's hot as all get up.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something about doing Bear in a snowstorm, though.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of planned
It
for that.
cemented our relationship.
Yeah.
Miranda and I got married on Bear because we had this seminal moment where we climbed it in a snowstorm. We were at the top of Bear with fresh snow up to our waists. And at one point, that section that's like kind of it's like all these steep stair steps cut into the rock. It's down below in the canyon section. There was so much fresh snow. I just sat back and luged.
Yeah.
Right on top of the snow.
That's how you do it.
When we were hiking up, John turned to me and he's like, "Do you want to turn back?"
We got to the saddle at Nebelhorn.
And I was like, "Well, we have to at least make it to the top."
There we go. Right answer.
I knew I would love her from that moment
I would
on.
say at that point, it was locked in. Nice.
Well, have you ever had to insert any group guidelines? I'm asking because we've faced this before where we've had to like bring up group guidelines and group behavioral guidelines in one of our groups. I'm wondering if you ever encountered that.
I've never had to do it en masse. I don't like to do that. I'd rather just talk privately with a few people, somebody if they're doing something that wasn't appropriate or that I felt was what defined the group. And it's only happened a few times. And I won't really talk about them, but because it's more private matters, but it was just, that's not what we're about. So, I've said a few things. Yeah. I mean, one, for example, I will say one that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but we were on a run and we were going in a particular direction and someone kind of stepped up, kind of drove people in the direction I didn't want to go. And I kind of came back and said, well, because they weren't really sticking together. They were kind of going in their own direction type thing. I'm like, so I had to kind of like, well, we're going to stick together. And I'd prefer if we would just not go that way in the future and
do the route I planned.
Yeah. Thing. And not, most people, it's not a big deal. In this particular case, it was just something that I did say publicly because I wanted everyone to understand. Because in that case, it was more of a risk thing. You can do that, but then, although I don't, everyone needs to be responsible for themselves, but there is still a group dynamic that we care about each other and we want to make sure everyone's okay. So, if you can do that kind of stuff, let's talk about it in
Right.
advance.
I mean, it's interesting.
Don't take over.
It's interesting being leaders of these groups, especially I think run communities, because there's so many different types of people in the community, and they have different experiences and different understanding about how a run group should operate or could operate based on their previous experiences. And when we're leaders in these communities, we're put in a position of leadership without maybe necessarily wanting to be in that position or having the experience to be in that position. And we have to assume that role because is this safety component to it.
Yeah. And I mean, the way I've always thought about and I've structured it is that this is the run that I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. If you want to join me on the run, here's the description, it can show up. So it's not, I'm here to show you this run. It's, we're all running together. This is the one that I'm choosing.
We're not going to get to some intersection and then decide as a group which way we go. Although occasionally that is part of your plan. Yeah. Like if the group wants to go this way through, but you have a plan about which way we're going to go.
Yeah. That was my favorite thing about Breakfast Club though. I don't like directions. Just like, tell me where to go and I'll go.
Yeah, so part of it is, if everyone needs to show up being responsible for themselves. I'm not out there to be a tour guide. And of course, as friends, running with friends, you do provide information and things like that. But as far as what to expect is you're out there running, taking care of yourself with friends. That's it.
Right.
So I'm not there to take care of you. I know if you get hurt as a group and as friends, we will help you. But there shouldn't be an expectation that this is a formal event in a sense where you are, I'm a tour guide and you're paying for this.
Right.
This
At
is
the end
just,
of the day,
we're out
it's
having
free.
fun. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're just here to run.
Yeah.
Do you think like the few times you've had to speak to people to, re-up the guidelines in their head about the run, do you think that's an important skill as a run leader to be able to have like an idea of what the guidelines are and be able to tell people when that's necessary?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I guess it's more of, I try to lead by example as opposed to have guidelines, so I try to make sure that what I'm doing is representative of what I'd like to see everyone do, in the sense of welcoming new people, making sure that we're not dropping people, saying hi to people on the trail, not being rude, not being obnoxious because we're a large group and they're out there to have fun and we're wrecking their day in 2 minutes that we pass them, or something like that, which happens.
Worst case, we yo-yo them. We pass them twice.
Yeah, but even when we do that, just making sure that I'm saying hi all the time and friendly, and then other people say, "Oh, that's how we do things here," And I mean, a big part of it is, as you guys know, in Boulder, there's such a diverse skill set and experience level in trail running. So there could be someone that's relatively new, new to town, maybe experienced running, but new to this type of running.
Yeah.
And then you have people who are training for their 100 in a couple of weeks, and they're, so there's different mindsets.
They're going running after this.
Or they ran to the run, they're continuing, and they're going to run back afterwards.
Yeah.
But so the idea is that, and this leads, kind of goes back to one of your earlier questions about the group in itself. In describing the group, it is not intended to be your long run workout.
Yeah.
It is a social group first and then a workout second, but no one complains about not getting a workout.
Yeah.
So everyone gets their workout, and with that mindset that it's more social, if you have to sit and wait for the back runner for 20 minutes, that's okay. You do that.
As long as there's not 70-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah. Now, granted, there's safety and weather and all that kind of stuff. And then we, arrange that. But the idea is everyone does that. And then as as the group gets pretty close knit, you have your friends. Pretty soon I'm having to push people to get them started because they like talking as well. So there's both dynamics. But I think to your last question, there's no rules, there's no guidelines around that. It's more about being good human beings. And if you're out there with a group of people and you signed up to run with a group of people, be a good human being, you know? Just because you're super fast and you want to keep going, and if you do, that's fine. Just keep going and, you know, let us know and we won't bother waiting. And, you know, so it's more of that stuff.
What inspired you to make the yearly recap video?
Yeah, let's talk about the yearly recap
that's
video.
Unique. I don't know. I've always been, you know, intrigued by the whole video process. And so you know, the YouTube was becoming big, and not that I was trying to create a YouTube channel at that point. It was more about, it would be fun to capture these on video. And it's because, you know, we have such a good time. It's such an experience out there. And I thought it'd just be fun. So I started experimenting with, you know, I think GoPro was relatively young at that point as well. So figuring out the tools and trying to capture the video and to see what it was about. So yeah, the first year was a little rough, you know, pretty boring watching hours of people running in the woods. It's pretty boring. So it took me a little while to figure out what was entertaining and interesting.
Yeah.
The audio was the hardest part. Well, there's two hard parts. One was this good audio, and the other one is making a watchable running video.
Yeah, so the editing.
Well, the non-bouncing. You try to carry, you know, back then there wasn't stabilization in the software, you know, so you try to carry your GoPro at the time and it was unwatchable. You know, you'd get it mounted to your chest or something and it's like,
it's so bouncy.
It's like you can't even watch
You
this.
get seasickness from trying to watch it.
Yeah.
You know, and gimbals have come a long way. Now they're super small, but they didn't used to be.
Yeah, so I got a gimbal early on, and after like the first year of the gimbal, you know, once I got the gimbal, then I was like, okay, now it's watchable, you know. So then I was working with the gimbal, but the gimbals, for anybody who doesn't know what a gimbal is, they basically have three motors in it and an accelerometer, so it acts like your neck and your head. It's like when you run, your eyes are stable.
It keeps the camera straight while your hand or your body is moving. Yeah,
so you can literally move your hand all around, but that's going to stay like a snake, you know, where you see the snakes moving the body and their head, it does that. So I now was able to have a running video, but all those little motors in there make buzzing sounds and the microphones was picking it up. So it was, again, unwatchable because it was like, bzz, 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 you know. So then I had to find...
breathe heavy, step. Bzz, 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 bzz.
So I had to figure out a way to get the audio to work. And so I needed an external audio, and GoPro is terrible at that. They had this big dongle and, you know, contraption. And so I researched and found different cameras that I could have a smaller little camera, a little external microphone. And so that was my rig.
Oh, I see. On yours, the DJI.
Yeah, so now I'm using DJIs. They have a good little adapter, and then I have these microphones that I make this little thing that I can mount that on the side so that the external mic then doesn't pick up the motors of the gimbal, and it's light.
Cool.
And so that's how I was able to capture the video.
All right.
And
then you're capturing what, like 10 hours of video
in the summer?
Yeah.
It's like a terabyte plus of
and then editing that down to how much? An hour? Half an hour?
It's usually like an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 30 minutes to an hour was trying to keep it under an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just grabbing, I mean, I don't turn it on in the beginning and record the whole thing.
Right.
It's like, I've been doing it for about 5 years now. So I kind of have an idea of what works in a video, what gets very boring, you know, and dialogue is good too, you know, wherever I can get it. So now I turn it on, turn it off, and capture certain pieces of dialogue.
Okay.
And at the end, it's about a terabyte or more of video coverage, or video and audio, that I then try to make something entertaining out of.
So was this video project that you did every year, is this the genesis of your interest in making videos, or does it go back?
No, that was it. Yeah. So this being able to capture that and the experience, capturing the experience of what we were feeling out there the best I could. And then, you know, creating those videos and then thinking that it would be cool to, you know, do something more permanent or longer term, from a channel perspective.
Well,
Trail Ambitions.
Yes, and let's tell us about Trail Ambitions.
So that's where Trail Ambitions started. So, well, two things happened there. One is early in the year, I left my corporate job and decided to pull it back a little bit, which freed up the time to start seriously thinking about getting into more of a YouTube type channel,
a creative endeavor.
Content creator type endeavor. And so in thinking about that too, it's the content creator and the channel was one aspect of it. I'd also like to do an online course,
I'll teach you the content creator secret handshake as well.
Yeah.
We'll get that done afterwards.
All right, good. I need to know all the secrets.
And what does your content consist of?
So it's basically trail running, and everything around trail running. So content will consist of, instructional type things, how to run, all the tips that I've been doing this for 20 years. So all the tips that I've learned.
I saw one of your ones about breathing techniques.
That
was pretty interesting. I just kept trying to do it.
Yeah. So I've got 7 videos or 8 videos so far. And so I've focused a little bit on a little bit of everything. So how to run, tips on, form, uphill running. I'll be getting to downhill running and flat running, technical running.
Ooh, with poles.
We can talk about poles.
I just recently learned how to use the poles. I could have used a video on how to use poles.
Yeah, so there's tons of opportunities as far as where to go with it.
But, yeah. I could help you with the pole video.
Nice. Yeah. Well, the other thing that it came from too, at least that part of the videos, is about a few years ago, I started a trail running 101 session as part of the Boulder Breakfast Club. So like in the summer, I would do like this 4-week, every Wednesday morning we meet for 4 weeks, and I would go through this outline that I put together. So we'd start with, how to run uphill, how to pace, how to, short stride versus long stride type stuff. And we just go through a cycle. And I found that there was a group of people that had not come out to the runs. They had signed up for the run, sometimes years ago, were lurking, as they say, but never really built up the courage to come on a run. And this was an opportunity for them to get a feel for it. Plus, they wanted to learn how to do some of the basics and so forth. So I realized that there was a need for the beginner trail runner, or even someone who's been doing it but wanted to get a little better at it. And plus, it helped me, learn who these people are, so I could advise them on whether they wanted, they should join or not. Because there's, like I said, there's a certain threshold that you need to get to come on, especially if it's in the summer or a certain type of run where you can't like bail and run back to Boulder. So
Long's Peak.
Yeah,
you're out there.
There's certain loops that it's a little dangerous to head back. So that taught me or helped me understand that there was a group of people out there that were looking for a little more. How do you get started? And so I was thinking about that when I started the channel, is that group of people would be, not that I want to focus it just on beginners, but I think we're all at a certain level of beginner.
Sure.
Just when we get to, if we have something figured out, then we go on a new run and,
I mean, I wish I had a lot of this back when I was getting in. I feel like everything I know from trail running, I learned from failing. And Miranda's an excellent listener. And she has become an excellent trail runner through obviously being an excellent person, but also listening to my advice, to your advice, to the people around her. And she has become incredible very quickly without needing to fail for, 4 years.
Yeah.
But I did make a series of what I call Boulder blunders when I first moved here.
Oh, yes.
And I would have really liked,
what was some of those?
Well, someone invited me on the Skyline run.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, like a 16, 17 mile run, like 1.5 liters of water should be fine. Maybe this will take 4 hours. If it's hard, we'll be good. No, that was not the case. It was, it was about 90 degrees out. It was July. I ran out of water real quick, and it was not a good time running out of water.
Didn't you bum some water from somebody?
No, I was at the top of Bear, and this is where we were running the opposite direction. So we started at Sanitas and ran to Bear, and I bummed a White Claw off of a dude on top of Bear.
Off of a bro.
A bro.
Nice. Welcome to high desert.
He had White Claw up there, and him and his friends were drinking White Claw, and I was like, "Can I get one of those?" So I was drinking a White Claw.
I've been out of water for an hour.
Vest right here. Oh, I'll never make that mistake again. Oh, and I couldn't remember, like, people were pulling pizza out of their bags and eating, like, the pizza, and I was like, I had my little gel, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong here?
Looks good.
I'm taking a gel, and they're eating pizza, and they're like sitting down, and I'm like, something's different.
This is a different kind of run.
Exactly. He's like, I kind of like it though.
That was like week 2 in Boulder.
Definitely.
Yeah, we've all been through those series of mistakes, and
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, so we got Trail Running 101 coming into Trail Ambitions. Do you want to do like, run with me up a mountain kind of videos, like experiential videos?
potentially. So this gets into what I've been learning about recording.
How do you
video.
make a YouTube channel? I want to hear everything.
Okay, we could start with that. Then I'll get into the actual where I want to go with this. So yeah, I'm also brand new at this. I've learned everything so far from YouTube videos and just, trial and error.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, most of it is just, I had the editing in a sense down. So I have a studio in my house because I play music. I do some recording. So I had the equipment to record. I had software to do video editing and things like that. So I was somewhat familiar with the recording process. Plus, doing the annual videos for the Breakfast Club, I had done some videos. I knew I could do that part of it.
Okay.
Talking to a camera, other than, my little section where I do the gratitude talk, where I thank people, just for being part of the group. I was able to do that, but I thought, can I do a whole video where I'm just talking to the camera? So
I did some I obviously love or am very interested in content creation. The podcast is our current project, but one time I don't know, it was a couple years ago, I do this like Advent of Code where you do a coding challenge. You code a problem every day, and I recorded myself live. I got OBS set up, and I was recording myself, a little picture of me, and I'm explaining the problem, and I posted it on YouTube. And I thought that practice of just being in front of a camera for no particular reason other than I'm making content, right? Even if it's, it's not running content, I thought that it's definitely different. It's different than being in a meeting. It's different than being on a podcast. It's like, there's something about it. It's like, hello, listeners, right?
I mean, same myself as well. I was in sales for half my career. I did sales presentations. I've been in front of large audiences doing, so I'm used to talking in front of people. And then being in the group, running the group, there is some level of talking in front of people.
People look towards you, and it's not just because you're tall.
Yeah. No. And so, I'm figuring how hard can it be? Well, it's funny because I can talk to a camera when I'm running, if I point it on myself or I'm just kind of going off the top of my head like that, but have a script and I want to cover certain points, I hit record and nothing. Mine goes blank. I mean, and so it's like, read a sentence, say a sentence, read a sentence, say a sentence, multiple times, and then fit it all together to make it somewhat, sound interesting. And it's funny because a lot of famous YouTubers are doing that exact same thing.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard them talk about it, and it's it's a lot of jump cuts, to all these little segments, and then they get creative with punch-ins, so it doesn't look like, it doesn't notice that you're actually cutting it, or they'll have something where they'll have some B-roll where they'll play like a picture or something else, but they literally cut the message or the dialogue up completely, especially cutting out all the ums and the ands and the buts and so's and all the other things.
It's right and yeah.
Yeah.
But You also have to develop your persona, your video persona. That was something that I learned when we first started this podcast, that my pod persona was going to be slightly different than Miranda in real life and different than Miranda at work. It's a different, slightly different version of yourself.
It's a little bit of a projection.
Yeah. Well, and my wife years ago was a news reporter.
Really?
Yeah. And so, and now, most of her career was in sales and in corporate world, but she started off as a news reporter, and, in talking with her, she's gave me some tips along the way as well, as far as, you need to be kind of over the top a little bit. You need to ramp it up a little bit, because if you're just your normal self, it sounds boring,
Absolutely.
And people get bored with that. So, but if you ramp it up a little bit, a little more energy, it sounds natural, or at least, so there's,
I guess
like,
coming through it, the way it's perceived through a camera is just different than the way you perceive a person in person.
Yeah. So
That makes
it's,
sense.
so it's recording and trying to say, okay, is that boring? Am I boring myself watching myself type thing? And so I've only had, a few videos, but it's kind of feeling that out, what's the right level of, hype, and be yet trying to remember everything I wanted to say. And so, that's what's been like the first set of videos are a variety of different types. So I have my home studio, I have my tailgate studio, which is where
showed me this.
back of the truck, so I can talk off the back of the truck. I have my trail studio where I'm on the trail talking to myself. So I'm trying to find different areas that are entertaining to talk from. And plus, we live in a gorgeous place, so I want to also have a little bit of Boulder and the surrounding areas in the place, in the videos as well.
I mean, there's some gorgeous backdrops in this city.
Yeah. So I don't know, just trying to figure things out at this point. What works, what doesn't.
And what's your goal, your ultimate goal?
To kind of, I'd like to monetize it. So my goal is, and so I'm going to keep it separate from the running group, because the running group is for fun, and it's just what I love to do.
So we don't want to monetize the Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club is not going to be monetized. Since it's a similar topic to Trail Ambitions, it is a feeder channel in a sense, because people may also be interested in that, but I don't want to spam the running group and turn that into a, something that they never signed up for. So that I do want to keep that as is as much as I can. So the the Trail Ambitions then is also an extension or another community that hopefully will extend beyond Boulder. So, because obviously a lot of friends here in Boulder, a lot of trail runners in Boulder, but there's a lot of pockets around the world as well that are big on trail running. So
there are other, you can trail run outside Boulder? I wasn't aware.
Well, I've heard. So we'll find out if people join.
Rumor has it.
So there's there's a little bit of figuring things out. Also, my list of topics that I don't want to run out of topics. So I want to have some variety of what works. So there'll be different streams. One is more educational. Here's my tips and things like that. But also, like I said, I know at least 75 or so runs in my repertoire that I cycle through on the Boulder Breakfast Club. So there's a lot of people moving to Boulder. A lot of people want to visit Boulder.
Oh, yeah. Here's my top 5
having the list of
summer alpine trail runs within 45 minutes of Boulder.
Yep. Stuff like that. Now, that leads me to a very interesting thing that, you asked about what I'm learning and what I'm getting into. Well, the whole legal / being allowed to record, having permits and things like that is something pretty nuts. So
really?
you cannot record, and especially if you want to monetize it or eventually monetize it on Boulder Open Space without a permit, Rocky Mountain National Park, any federal lands.
Wait, even National Forest lands?
National Forest lands.
What?
There's lots of rules around that. So
goodness.
I'm now digging into that. And the thing with YouTube is it's not whether you are monetizing it. It's whether, since Google owns it and Google is monetizing the channel, even if you're not getting paid for it, is still considered monetization.
Wow.
So there's a whole, for those of you that are interested in that or didn't know that, go, search for on YouTube for, monetized videos in national, forests and so forth. And there's tons of people complaining and things about that. Different things about that. So I'm trying to figure out and learn from them, go through the appropriate permit process and get everything. So like Boulder open space is not difficult to get permit. It's only $50 for a commercial license, limited use, but you need insurance. And so in order to get insurance, I didn't want to put that under my name. I wanted to put
insurance for what?
Liability insurance, general liability insurance.
Just general for your business, for your
for
actions.
anybody. So if you wanted to post a YouTube video and record, you needed liability insurance.
Oh yeah.
So it's like $1 to $2 million in liability insurance for that. So I'm like, well, I don't want to put that on my, since I have a business going. So now I need to set up a business, which I had intended, but now I need to do that first because I want to create the business so I can get the permit and the business name. And so then,
luckily, it's pretty easy to make a hadn't Colorado.
Yeah, but I hadn't done that.
You do it
before.
all online.
So now it's like, and I need to set up an LLC, and there's time to do that. Now, so I'm learning about how to set up an LLC and how to do that. Then I need to call the insurance company to figure out what type of insurance I need to get, which I learned there's a YouTuber insurance policy for content creation. Okay. So I was like, great.
There is.
Great. Let me hear about that.
Of course there is. Yeah.
So I'm just
wonder if there's podcast insurance.
I know. We might need
content creator. Yeah, it's the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because if you say something and somebody, you say something that someone doesn't like and they sue you over it.
Oh gosh.
Mm-hmm.
So
we could
guess
get
we'll have
sued.
to look into this.
You have to look into that.
Nobody get any ideas.
Yeah, so it's like I'm just feeling my way in the dark here, but I'm bumping into some things here, which is kind of interesting, which is fun. It's cool. It's new for me. So
I remember when we were getting started, our first 8 episodes were about a totally different kind of show, right? We wanted to make a relationship advice podcast. That's obviously not what we're doing now, but like we started with this idea.
Runners.
Yeah, for runners. Always for runners.
Always runners, yeah.
And then over a few episodes, I think it was like 8, we had just recorded with Caitlin Yonke, and we were like, wait a second, like, is this really the direction we want to go in, or do we want to go in something else? And we talked about it, and we rejiggered it, and now we have our whole spiel, which we've been going on for the last year, and it's been really good. It's kept us, engaged. Do you think, it's hard to predict this, but do you foresee changing what the YouTube channel is about based on like how your interests change over time, or just like, does making videos impact what the videos you want to make, right? Because that's kind of what happened with us, is like actually making these podcasts told us, oh, our original idea, not exactly what we wanted.
Right.
But we only knew that after making episodes and talking into microphones.
I can definitely see that happening. I think what I'm working on right now, being the instructional videos, there's enough that, I've had because I had the group and I've done the training sessions with the group, I know there's an audience for that type of content. So, but I can definitely see myself running out of that content. I only know so much about what I've done, and then after a while, I'll rehash it a little bit, learning different things, but I don't want people to get bored with the same old content. So it's going to have to evolve, and how it evolves, I don't know. It's going to depend on what people are interested in, what I'm interested in, what I'm knowledgeable about, or what I can become knowledgeable about, and kind of move in that direction. So who knows?
I got a few ideas for you, but we'll talk about that off the air.
Absolutely.
We don't want anyone stealing the ideas.
Yeah,
that's right.
Don't get any ideas.
Although I did have an idea for you guys.
Okay,
Ooh, let's hear it.
You can tell us on the air.
This wasn't really an official one, but on one of our last, when you're out there running with a group and the creative mind is going.
Yes.
So we decided that we were going to come up with a script for a Hallmark show, a trail running version of a Hallmark episode.
Like,
I figured we had plenty of resources to tap into.
Yes, there are.
So, you have the, training for the turkey trot, but we're going to be doing repeats on, on Bear Mountain. So we've got all these things. We have plenty of love stories in the group happening.
We do.
So we could have some of that going on. And then at 45 minutes before the end of the show, where you have the strife,
Yes.
they're going to come on your podcast, Running with Problems. And that's when they're going to discover that the woman that the guy was actually hanging out with was his sister.
What?
Not his new girlfriend. That's going to happen on your podcast.
I love it.
We usually take,
So if there's any
feedback from the
scriptwriters out there, we need some help.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit of help to bring this across the finish line.
Okay.
pun intended.
I did meet a movie producer once who'd like to come to Boulder. We'll have to talk to him. See if we can get this,
I met
this funded.
the producer of The Room,
Oh,
Tommy Wiseau.
yeah.
This sounds like right up his alley.
The Room is that really bad movie, right?
Arguably the worst movie of all time.
I still have never seen it.
Well,
I've not seen it either.
Scott, we like to close this podcast by asking our guests to share a piece of advice. And it sounds like you have a lot of advice to give. So I'd love to ask you for a piece of unsolicited advice to share with our audience.
Okay.
It can be running related or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be somewhat running related. It's going to be running group related.
Okay.
I like
Yeah.
it.
Apropos.
So if you want to join the running group, a running group, feel free to or reach out to the instructor or the person that's the run leader rather, and just talk to them. You'll find most people are pretty open and will tell you, what the group is all about and whether it's right for you to join, and then come on out and give it a shot. I think too many people sit back and they lurk, which nothing wrong with lurking, and watching it, but sometimes you just need that little shove to get out there. And I think
do. And I think people will
Definitely do.
appreciate that little shove.
just give it a shot. Go out there. And even if it fails miserably, even if you find a group that takes off and leaves you at the trailhead, you're now at the trailhead. Go run something and you're out there. Go find another group. In a place like Boulder, there's, probably 10 or 15 different running groups. One of them is right for you.
I
Probably
love
10
that.
or 15 at the trailhead on that night.
Yeah. But get out there, even if it turns out to be a bad experience, it got you out there. Just find one. There's one out there for you. It's waiting for you. Group of people you're going to love. And it's the best way to meet people.
That's great advice. I love running groups, and I encourage everyone to get out and try some. If you try a new running group as a result of this advice, let us know. Send a message to our email, podcast@runningwithproblems.run, or our Instagram @runningwithproblems. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Appreciate
This is
you being
fun.
on the pod. This was good.
Yeah, thanks.